Tejo was tired. His eyes were heavy, his back was sore, and his legs felt like they were made of stone. He had been working for 12 hours straight, moving cargo boxes from one end of the space station to the other. This was his life on Horizon's Edge, a massive station floating in the middle of nowhere where hundreds of alien species lived and worked together. He was 28 years old, not too tall, not too strong, just an ordinary human doing an ordinary job. The pay was decent, the food was acceptable, and his best friend Yuna worked in the engineering section nearby. Life was not exciting, but it was peaceful. Tonight, however, peace was about to end. Tejo pushed a hover cart stacked high with metal crates. The boxes were so tall that he could barely see over them. His earpiece played old Earth music, and he hummed along quietly as he walked through the station's main corridor. The corridor was busy even at this late hour. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved past him. Some had 4 arms, some had scales, some floated instead of walking. Tejo had stopped being amazed by them years ago. When you live in space long enough, everything becomes normal. He turned a corner without slowing down. The music in his ears was too loud. The crates blocked his view. He did not see the group of tall figures standing in the middle of the hallway. He crashed into something solid. The impact was hard. Tejo's face hit something firm and armored. The hovercart tipped over, and all the crates fell to the ground with a thunderous noise. Metal crashed against metal. The sound echoed through the entire corridor. Tejo fell on his back and groaned. His nose hurt. His pride hurt more. "What the hell was that?" he muttered, pulling out his earpiece and sitting up. Then he saw what he had bumped into. Standing before him was the tallest woman he had ever seen. She was at least 7 feet tall, with skin as pale as moonlight and eyes that glowed deep red. Her hair was long and black, flowing down her back like a dark river. She wore armor that looked like it cost more than everything Tejo had ever owned combined. Behind her stood 4 guards, all equally tall and pale, all staring at Tejo with expressions of pure horror. No, they were not horrified by Tejo, they were horrified for him. The entire corridor had gone silent. Every alien nearby had stopped moving. Some were backing away slowly, others had dropped to their knees. A few were actually trembling. Tejo looked around, confused. Why was everyone so scared? The tall woman turned slowly. Her movement was graceful, like a predator that had no need to rush. Her red eyes locked onto Tejo, and her lips pulled back to reveal 2 sharp fangs. Tejo realized 2 things at once. First, this woman was a Nocturi. He had heard of them before. They were an ancient species of alien vampires who fed on the life force of other beings. They ruled over 12 star systems and were feared across the entire galaxy. Their nobles were said to be so powerful that they could kill with just a thought. Second, he had just crashed face first into her rear end. In public, in front of her guards, the Nocturi woman's voice was cold and sharp, like a blade made of ice. "Do you want to die, human?" Every other being in the corridor held their breath. Some closed their eyes, not wanting to watch what would happen next. A small alien nearby started crying quietly. Tejo rubbed his sore nose and looked up at the terrifying vampire standing over him. Her psychic aura pressed down on him like a weight. He could feel her power, ancient and dark, trying to crush his will and fill him with fear. But Tejo was tired. He had been working for 12 hours. His back hurt, his nose hurt, and honestly, he had seen scarier things in the station's cafeteria. "Sorry about that," he said casually, slowly getting to his feet. "Didn't see you there." The boxes were too tall. He dusted off his uniform and looked at her armor. Nice outfit though, very shiny. Silence. Complete and total silence. One of the guards behind the Nocturi woman made a choking sound. The small, crying alien fainted. The vampire stared at Tejo with an expression he could not read. Her red eyes were wide, her fangs still visible. For a long moment, she said nothing. "Do you know who I am?" she finally asked, her voice dangerously soft. Teho shrugged. "A Nocturi noble, I'm guessing, based on the armor and the scary guards and everything." "I am Lady Ceres of House Valdrin," she said slowly, as if speaking to a child. "I have destroyed entire planets. I have drained the life from kings and emperors. My name is spoken with fear across 12 star systems." "Cool," Teho said. "I'm Teho. I move boxes." One of the guards stepped forward, his hand on his sword. "My lady, let me remove this insect from your presence." Ceres raised a hand, stopping him. She was still staring at Teho with those burning red eyes. She looked confused, angry, and something else. Was it curiosity? "You do not fear me," she said. It was not a question. "I mean, you're definitely scary," Teho admitted, "but I'm too tired to be scared right now. Can I pick up my boxes? My boss is going to kill me if I'm late again." Ceres's eye twitched. At that moment, Yuna came running around the corner. She was a short woman with messy hair and grease stains on her uniform. When she saw the scene before her, the color drained from her face. "Teho!" she hissed, grabbing his arm. "What did you do?" "I bumped into her. It was an accident." You bumped into Yuna, looked at Ceres, and immediately dropped to her knees. "My lady, please forgive my friend. He is an idiot. He means no disrespect." "Hey," Teho protested. "I'm not an idiot." "Shut up." Yuna pulled at his arm desperately. "Kneel, apologize, do something." Ceres watched this exchange with a strange expression. The confusion in her eyes was slowly being replaced by cold anger. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever treated her with such casual disrespect. This human had touched her, insulted her, and now stood before her without a hint of fear. It was unacceptable. "This insult cannot go unanswered," Ceres declared. Her voice echoed through the corridor. "I invoke the ancient right of my people, the vow of consequence." Yuna gasped. Even the guards looked surprised. "What's that?" Teho asked. "You will serve me," Ceres said, stepping closer until she towered over him. "For one complete lunar cycle. You will be my servant, my property, my slave. You will obey my every command. And if you refuse, or if you fail, I will drain every drop of life from your body." Teho thought about this for a moment. He thought about his job, his sore back, his annoying boss, and the 12-hour shifts that never seemed to end. "Does this servant thing pay?" he asked. Ceres blinked. "What? Like, is there a salary? Benefits? Time off?" Yuna looked like she wanted to die. The guards looked like they wanted to kill him themselves just to end this painful conversation. Ceres's face twisted with frustration. In all her centuries of life, no one had ever responded to a death threat by asking about employee benefits. "You will come with me," she growled. "Now." Teho shrugged. "Sure, beats overtime." And that was how Teho, a simple cargo worker from Earth, became the servant of the most feared vampire noble in the galaxy. All because he had bumped into her butt. The inside of Ceres's ship was dark and cold. Teho had expected nothing less from an alien vampire, but he still wished he had brought a jacket. The walls were made of black metal that seemed to absorb light. Red crystals along the ceiling provided just enough glow to see by. Everything looked expensive and dangerous, just like its owner. Two guards walked behind Teho, their hands on their weapons. They had not stopped glaring at him since he came aboard. He understood their feelings. If some random alien had bumped into his boss's rear end, he would probably be angry too. Ceres walked ahead, her long black robes flowing behind her like shadows. She had not spoken a word since leaving the station. Her silence was somehow more frightening than her threats had been. They entered a large hall at the center of the ship. It was impressive in a scary way. Tall pillars lined the walls. A massive throne sat on a raised platform. Dozens of Nocturi stood around the room, and they all turned to stare as Teho walked in. Every single one of them looked at him like he was already dead. Saris climbed the steps and sat on her throne. She crossed her legs and rested her chin on her hand, studying Teho like a cat studying a mouse. "Kneel!" she commanded. Teho looked around. Everyone else in the room was standing. "Why? No one else is kneeling." A gasp rippled through the crowd. One of the guards behind Teho grabbed his shoulder and tried to force him down. Teho stumbled, but caught himself before his knees hit the floor. "Hey, watch it," he complained. "I have bad knees." The guard raised his fist to strike, but Saris stopped him with a wave. "Leave him." She leaned forward on her throne, her red eyes gleaming. "Tell me, human, what is your full name? Where do you come from?" "Park Teho. I'm from Earth. I've been working on Horizon's Edge for about 3 years now." "And what exactly do you do?" "I told you already. I move boxes." More whispers from the crowd. A cargo worker. A nobody. This was the human who had insulted Lady Saris? This was the creature who had touched her without permission and spoken to her without fear? "Do you understand what you have done?" Saris asked quietly. "Do you understand the crime you have committed?" Teho scratched his head. "I bumped into you. It was an accident. People bump into each other all the time." "I am not people!" Saris's voice thundered through the hall. The crystals on the ceiling flickered. Several Nocturi dropped to their knees in fear. "I am Lady Saris of House Valdrin. I have walked among the stars for over 800 years. I have conquered worlds. I have drunk the blood of emperors. No one touches me. No one speaks to me with such disrespect. No one." Teho blinked. "You're 800 years old? Wow, you look great for your age." Dead silence. One of the Nocturi in the crowd actually fell over. Another covered his face with his hands. A third started praying quietly to whatever gods his people believed in. Kyle, the head of Saris's guards, stepped forward. He was tall even for a Nocturi, with a scar running down the left side of his face. He had served Saris for over 200 years and had never seen anyone speak to her this way. "My lady," he said carefully, "perhaps this human is mentally damaged. That would explain his strange behavior." "I'm not mentally damaged," Teho said, offended. "I'm just tired. Do you people have coffee on this ship? I could really use some coffee." Saris stood up from her throne. She walked down the steps slowly, her eyes never leaving Teho. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship. When she reached Teho, she stood so close that he could feel the coldness radiating from her skin. "You do not fear me," she said again, just like she had said in the corridor. "Why?" Teho thought about this seriously. It was a fair question. Everyone else seemed terrified of this woman. Ships fled when they saw her flag. Entire species surrendered at the mention of her name. So why wasn't he scared? "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I never really learned how to be scared properly. My mom always said I was too stupid to know when I was in danger." "Your mother sounds wise." She was. She also said that everyone dies eventually, so there's no point worrying about it too much. Saris tilted her head slightly. In 800 years, she had never met anyone like this human. His mind was completely unaffected by her psychic aura. Her powers of fear and intimidation, which had broken the will of countless beings, did nothing to him. It was infuriating. It was also interesting. "The vow of consequence stands," she announced, turning to address the crowd. "This human will serve me for 1 lunar cycle. He will learn proper respect. He will learn to fear. And when the cycle ends, I will decide his fate." Kale approached his lady and spoke quietly. "My lady, is this wise? He is just a human. They are fragile, they break easily, and they are strange." "That is precisely why I want to study him," Saris replied. "No being has ever resisted my power so completely. I want to know why." Teho raised his hand like a student in class. "Excuse me? Can I ask a question?" Everyone stared at him. Where am I going to sleep? And what about food? I can't drink blood like you guys. I need actual food. And water, lots of water. And maybe some snacks. KL looked like he wanted to strangle him. The other Nocturi looked confused. Saris just stared. Also, Tejo continued, can I contact my friend Yuna? She's probably worried about me, and she has my favorite jacket. It gets cold in space, you know? Saris rubbed her temples. She was starting to get a headache, which was remarkable because Nocturi rarely got headaches. Kale, she said wearily, find him quarters, get him food, let him contact his friend, and keep him away from me until I summon him. Yes, my lady. As the guards led Tejo away, he called back over his shoulder. Thanks. Hey, do you guys have movies on this ship? I was in the middle of watching something, and I really want to see how it ends. The doors closed behind him. Saris stood alone in her throne room, surrounded by her servants and guards, and wondered what exactly she had gotten herself into. She had expected fear. She had expected begging. She had expected the human to break within hours. Instead, he asked about coffee and movies. For the first time in centuries, Lady Saris of House Valdrin did not know what to do. In his new quarters, Tejo looked around at the small, dark room. It was cold and uncomfortable, but it was better than his cramped cabin on the station. At least here, he didn't have to share a bathroom with 12 other workers. He lay down on the hard bed and stared at the ceiling. 1 lunar cycle, he muttered to himself. How long is that? Hopefully not too long. I wonder if they have good food here. Within minutes, he was fast asleep. He did not dream of vampires, or death, or danger. He dreamed of coffee and his favorite jacket. Meanwhile, in her private chambers, Saris was thinking about him. About the strange human who did not fear death. About his stupid smile and his stupid questions and his complete lack of proper respect. She would break him, she decided. She would find his weakness. She would make him kneel. No human was going to make a fool of her. No human was going to resist her power. And absolutely no human was going to bump into her rear end and get away with it. This was war. 3 days passed on the Crimson Fang. 3 days of chaos that the Nocturi crew would never forget. On the first day, Tejo showed up late to his duties. He was supposed to stand outside Saris's chambers at dawn, ready to serve. Instead, he arrived 2 hours late with messy hair and sleepy eyes. Sorry, he yawned. I couldn't figure out how to set an alarm on the weird alien clock in my room. Kale, who had been waiting with growing fury, nearly exploded. You dare to make Lady Saris wait? Do you have any idea what the punishment for such disrespect is? Death, Tejo guessed. Worse than death. Much worse. What's worse than death? Kale opened his mouth, then closed it. He actually did not have a good answer. Among the Nocturi, death was considered a mercy compared to their other punishments. But explaining this to a human who did not understand fear seemed pointless. Just don't be late again, Kale growled. Tejo was late again the next day. And the day after that, the Nocturi crew did not know what to do with him. Their entire society was built on fear and respect. Lower beings trembled before higher beings. Servants obeyed without question. The idea that someone could simply ignore the rules was impossible for them to understand. But Tejo ignored everything. When they told him to bow, he nodded instead. When they told him to be silent, he hummed songs from Earth. When they told him to show proper respect, he said, sure thing, and then continued acting exactly the same way. Sarah summoned him on the 4th day. She sat on a smaller throne in her private study, surrounded by ancient books and glowing artifacts. Her red eyes watched Tejo as he walked in and stood before her with his hands in his pockets. You have been here for 4 days, she said coldly, and already my guards are begging me to let them kill you. Yeah, Kale seems pretty stressed, Tejo agreed. He should try breathing exercises. They help with anger. Saris's eye twitched. Do you understand that I could kill you right now? With a single thought, I could drain every drop of life from your body. I know. You've mentioned it a few times. And yet you do not care? Teho shrugged. I mean, I care. I don't want to die. But worrying about it won't change anything, right? If you're going to kill me, you're going to kill me. Stressing about it will just make my last days miserable. Saris leaned back in her throne. She had tried everything to break this human. She had used her psychic powers to flood his mind with visions of death and horror. Nothing. She had placed him in a room filled with her most terrifying servants. He had taught them card games. She had even brought him to witness an execution, hoping the sight of death would finally spark fear in his heart. He had asked if the executed man had any last words, then commented that the execution method seemed inefficient. What is wrong with you? Saris asked, genuinely curious now. Are all humans like this? Like what? Fearless, stupid, completely immune to common sense. Teho thought about it. Not all of us, but a lot of us, maybe. Humans have always been kind of crazy. We jumped off cliffs for fun before we learned to fly. We explored oceans before we could swim well. We went to space before we really knew what was up there. I guess we just don't let fear stop us much. Saris was quiet for a moment. She had conquered many species over the centuries. She had studied their weaknesses and exploited their fears. But humans were different. They were weak, short-lived, and fragile. They should have been easy to control. Instead, they had spread across the galaxy like weeds, surviving in places that should have killed them. Now she was beginning to understand why. Kale, she called. The guard entered immediately. Yes, my lady? Bring me everything we have on humans. Their biology, their psychology, their history, everything. Kyle looked surprised but bowed. At once, my lady. Over the next few days, Saris studied. She read reports from Nocturi scientists who had examined humans. She watched recordings of human behavior from across the galaxy. She learned things that shocked her. Humans had evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme weather. Their short lifespans meant that they experienced time differently than long-lived species. For them, every moment was precious. Death was not a distant concept, but a constant companion. As a result, humans had developed a strange relationship with fear. They felt it, certainly, but they had learned to push through it. They had learned to act despite being afraid. And some humans, like Teho, had simply stopped letting fear control them altogether. More importantly, the Nocturi psychic abilities worked by amplifying existing fears. But Teho's fear response was so dulled, so calm, that there was nothing to amplify. His mind was like a still lake that refused to ripple no matter how many stones were thrown into it. He was not brave. He was not special. He was simply different. Meanwhile, Teho was making friends. It started with a young Nocturi servant named Mira. She was responsible for bringing him his meals, and she always looked terrified when she approached his door. One day, Teho invited her inside. "You don't have to be scared of me," he said with a smile. "I'm just a human. I can't hurt you, even if I wanted to." Mira was confused. In her experience, everyone hurt everyone. That was how the universe worked. But Teho just talked to her. He asked about her life, her family, her dreams. He told her about Earth, about his childhood, about the time he accidentally set his kitchen on fire trying to cook dinner for his mother. Mira laughed. She had not laughed in years. Word spread among the lower servants. The strange human was kind. He treated them like equals. He did not look down on them or threaten them or use them. He just talked like they were people. Soon, a small group began gathering in Teho's quarters in the evenings. He taught them card games from Earth. He shared the snacks that Yuna had sent him from the station. He told jokes that made no sense, but somehow made everyone smile. Even some of the guards started warming up to him. They would never admit it, but they found his behavior refreshing. In a world of fear and hierarchy, Tejo was like a breath of fresh air. Kale reported all of this to Saris. "He is corrupting the crew," Kale said with concern. "They are starting to question things. Some of them are even happy." Saris frowned. Happy was dangerous. Happy servants might start thinking they deserved better treatment. Happy guards might start questioning their orders. "Should I stop him?" Kale asked. Saris considered it. She could order Tejo to stop socializing. She could punish anyone who spent time with him. She could make an example of him to remind everyone of their place. But something stopped her. She thought about Mira's laughter, which had been reported to her. She thought about the servants who walked with lighter steps now. She thought about the guards who seemed more alert and alive. "No," she said finally. "Let him continue, for now." Kael looked surprised, but bowed and left. Alone in her chambers, Saris stared out the window at the passing stars. She had lived for 800 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had experienced every pleasure and every pain the universe had to offer. But she had never felt whatever it was that Tejo seemed to carry with him. That warmth, that lightness, that ability to make others smile without force or fear. She hated him for it. She was also, against her will, starting to admire him for it. And that scared her more than anything had in centuries. 2 weeks into his servitude, Tejo was summoned to Saris's private garden. He had not known the ship had a garden, but when the door opened, he found himself standing in a vast room filled with strange alien plants. The ceiling displayed an artificial night sky, complete with unfamiliar stars. Dark flowers bloomed everywhere, their petals black and purple and deep red. It was beautiful in a haunting way. Saris sat on a stone bench in the center, her pale face lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent mushrooms. For once, she did not look angry or cold. She looked thoughtful. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the bench across from her. Tejo sat. He looked around at the flowers with genuine wonder. "This place is amazing. How do you keep plants alive on a spaceship?" "Ancient technology. The garden has existed for longer than most civilizations." Saris paused. "I come here to think." "About what?" "About you." Tejo raised an eyebrow. "Me? I'm not that interesting." "You are the most interesting thing that has happened to me in centuries." Saris met his eyes directly. "I have tried to understand you. I have studied human biology and psychology. I have watched you interact with my crew, and I still cannot figure you out." "There's not much to figure out. I'm just a regular guy." "No," Saris said firmly. "You are not regular. Regular humans feel fear when I look at them. Regular humans beg for their lives when I threaten them. Regular humans do not teach card games to vampire servants or share snacks with the crew that imprisoned them." Tejo scratched his cheek awkwardly. "Maybe I'm just bad at being a prisoner?" Despite herself, Saris smiled. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. She had not smiled genuinely in a very long time. "Tell me about your world," she said. "Tell me about Earth." So Tejo talked. He told her about blue skies and green forests and oceans so vast you could not see the other side. He told her about his mother, who had raised him alone and taught him to find joy in small things. He told her about his father, who had died when Tejo was young, and how his mother had said that death was just another journey. "She sounds remarkable," Saris said. She was. She passed away a few years ago. That's why I left Earth and started working in space. I wanted to see all the things she never got to see. You carry her memory with you, always. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The artificial stars twinkled above them. The dark flowers swayed gently in a breeze that came from nowhere. "I had a mother too," Saris said quietly. "Long ago. She was the one who taught me that power was everything, that fear was the only way to survive, that kindness was weakness. Do you believe that? Saris hesitated. A month ago, she would have said yes without thinking. Now, she was not so sure. I used to, she admitted. Now I wonder if she was wrong. Before Tejo could respond, an alarm shattered the peace. Red lights flashed. A voice announced over the ship's speakers that they were under attack. Saris was on her feet instantly. Raiders? They must have followed us from the Vorn sector. Raiders? Like space pirates? Yes, stay here. You will be safe in the garden. She swept out of the room, her guards falling in behind her. Tejo was left alone among the flowers. For about 30 seconds, then he ran after her. The ship was in chaos. Nocturi warriors rushed through the corridors, weapons drawn. Explosions echoed from somewhere below. Through a window, Tejo could see 3 smaller ships attacking the Crimson Fang, their weapons blazing. He found his way to the cargo bay, where a fierce battle was taking place. Raiders had breached the hull and were pouring in. They were ugly creatures, covered in scales and carrying jagged weapons. The Nocturi guards fought back, but they were outnumbered. Tejo looked around for something to use. He was not a warrior. He had no combat training, but he could not just stand there and do nothing. His eyes landed on a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. Good enough, he muttered. He grabbed it, took a deep breath, and charged into the battle, screaming at the top of his lungs. Later, no one could agree on exactly what happened. Some, said Tejo, had fought like a demon possessed. Others said he had run around like a headless chicken, spraying foam everywhere and hitting anything that moved. The truth was probably somewhere in between. What everyone agreed on was that he had saved 3 crew members. The first was Mira, who had been cornered by 2 raiders. Tejo had appeared out of nowhere, blasted them both in the face with foam, and then hit one of them with the extinguisher so hard that the metal canister dented. The second was a guard named Doric, who had been knocked down and was about to be killed. Tejo had thrown himself onto the raider's back, clinging on and screaming while Doric recovered and finished the enemy off. The third was Kale himself. The head guard had been fighting 3 raiders at once when one of them got behind him. Tejo had seen it happen. Without thinking, he had thrown the empty fire extinguisher at the raider's head, knocking him out cold. Kale had turned, seen Tejo standing there with wide eyes and foam-covered clothes, and said nothing. He had simply nodded once, then continued fighting. When the battle was over and the raiders were dead or fleeing, Saris found Tejo sitting against a wall, breathing heavily. He was covered in extinguisher foam, alien blood, and his own sweat. He looked terrible. "I told you to stay in the garden," she said. "Yeah, sorry. I'm not great at following orders." "You could have died, but I didn't." Tejo grinned up at her weakly. "Besides, I couldn't let them hurt my card game students. Who else is going to teach Mira how to bluff?" Saris stared at him for a long moment. Around them, her crew was watching. The human had fought for them. The weak, fearless, impossible human had risked his life for people who were supposed to be his captors. "You are either the bravest being I have ever met," Saris said slowly, "or the most foolish. Can I be both?" Saris laughed. It was not a small smile this time. It was a real laugh, clear and bright, that echoed through the cargo bay. Her crew stared in shock. None of them had ever heard their lady laugh like that. "Both," she agreed. "You can definitely be both." She offered him her hand and pulled him to his feet. For a moment, they stood close together, her cold hand in his warm one. "Thank you," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "For saving my people. They're not so bad once you get to know them," Tejo replied. "Especially when they're not trying to kill me." Saris smiled again. It was becoming a habit around this human. That night, she visited him in his quarters, not as his mistress, but as something else. Something neither of them had words for yet. They talked until the artificial dawn, about life and death, about fear and courage, about what it meant to truly live. When Saris finally left, she paused at the door. Teho, she said, you are the strangest human I have ever met. Thanks, I think. It was a compliment. She was gone before he could respond. Alone in his room, Teho smiled at the ceiling. He had come aboard this ship as a prisoner, a servant, a punishment. Now he was something else. He was not sure what exactly, but he was looking forward to finding out. Within days, every noble house in the 12 star systems had heard about Lady Ceres and her human pet. They heard that she had taken a servant who did not fear her. They heard that she had laughed in public. They heard that she was spending hours alone with the creature, talking to him like an equal. To the ancient Nocturi families, this was scandal. This was weakness. This was opportunity. Lord Varn of House Mordak was the first to act. Varn was old, even by Nocturi standards. He had lived for over 1,000 years, and every century had made him crueler. He believed in the old ways: fear, dominance, and absolute power. He had despised Ceres's family for generations, always looking for a way to destroy them. Now she had given him one. His ship arrived at the Crimson Fang 3 weeks into Teho's servitude. It was massive, twice the size of Ceres's vessel, and it carried an army of warriors. When Varn requested permission to board, Ceres could not refuse without appearing weak. Teho watched from a corridor as the delegation came aboard. Lord Varn was tall and thin, with skin so pale it was almost transparent. His eyes were not red like other Nocturi, but black, like 2 holes in his face. He wore robes made of some material that seemed to move on its own, and his smile showed teeth that had been sharpened to points. Behind him walked a dozen warriors and 3 lesser nobles. All of them looked at the Crimson Fang's crew with open contempt. That guy looks like trouble, Teho muttered to Kale, who stood nearby. He is worse than trouble, Kale replied grimly. He is death walking. Ceres received Varn in her throne room. She wore her finest armor and her coldest expression. Whatever warmth Teho had brought out of her was carefully hidden now. Lord Varn, she said formally, to what do I owe this visit? Varn smiled his terrible smile. I heard rumors, Lady Ceres. Disturbing rumors. I had to see for myself if they were true. What rumors? That the great Lady Ceres has taken a human as a companion. That she laughs now, and smiles, and shows mercy. Varn's voice dripped with false concern. I was worried that you might be unwell. I am perfectly well. The human is a servant, nothing more. A curiosity I am studying. Then you will not mind if I see him? It was not really a question. Ceres had no choice. Teho was brought forward. He walked into the throne room with his usual calm expression, hands in his pockets. When he saw Varn, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Unease. There was something wrong about this alien. Something that even Teho's dulled fear response could not completely ignore. Varn radiated malice like heat from a fire. So this is the human, Varn said, circling Teho slowly. This is the creature that has bewitched our noble lady. I didn't bewitch anyone, Teho said. We're just friends. Varn stopped. His black eyes widened slightly. Friends? A Nocturi noble and a human. Friends? He turned to face the crowd. Do you hear this? Do you understand what this means? House Valdrin has fallen so low that their lady befriends food. She treats cattle as equals. She brings shame upon our entire species. Ceres stood from her throne. You go too far, Varn. I speak the truth. Varn's voice rose. Your father would weep to see what you have become. Your mother would die of shame. You have become weak, Ceres. Soft, pathetic. The throne room was silent. Ceres's hands were clenched into fists. Her eyes blazed with fury, but she controlled herself. Losing her temper now would only prove Varn's point. The human has done nothing wrong, she said coldly. He is under my protection until the lunar cycle ends. That is Nocturi law. Law? Varn laughed. You dare speak to me of law? Very well, let us follow the law. He turned to face Ceres directly. I challenge you, Lady Ceres of House Valdrin. I invoke the right of dominance. Gasps filled the room. Even KL took a step back in shock. The right of dominance was an ancient tradition. It was a formal duel between nobles fought with both blade and psychic power. The winner gained everything the loser possessed: lands, titles, ships, servants, and life itself. It was a death sentence disguised as honor. Ceres's face went pale. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. Varn smiled wider. Unless you wish to refuse? But then, of course, you would be admitting your weakness to everyone here. House Valdrin would be finished either way. He had trapped her. If she accepted, she would have to fight a battle she might not win. Varn was older, more experienced, and his psychic powers were legendary. If she refused, her reputation would be destroyed and her house would crumble anyway. I accept, Ceres said quietly. Excellent, Varn clapped his hands together. The duel will take place in 3 days. I look forward to ending your bloodline. He swept out of the throne room, his entourage following. The doors closed behind them with a boom. Ceres sank back onto her throne. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. Later that night, Tejo found her in the garden. She sat among the dark flowers, her head in her hands. This is my fault, Tejo said. If I hadn't bumped into you that day, none of this would have happened. Ceres looked up. Her eyes were red, and not just because of their natural color. No, Varn has been looking for an excuse to challenge me for decades. If it was not you, it would have been something else. Can you beat him? Ceres was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. He is stronger than me. His psychic abilities are greater. In a fair fight, I would probably lose. Tejo sat down next to her. Then don't fight fair. What do you mean? Humans never fight fair. We can't afford to. We're smaller and weaker than almost everything else in the universe. So we cheat. We trick. We find advantages that our enemies don't expect. Tejo looked at her seriously. You don't have to play by his rules, Ceres. You just have to win. Ceres stared at him. You would help me after everything I have done to you? You didn't really do anything to me. You gave me a place to sleep, food to eat, and friends to talk to. That's more than some of my actual jobs have offered. Despite everything, Ceres laughed softly. You are impossible. So, I've been told. They sat together in the garden, two unlikely allies facing an impossible challenge. Above them, the artificial stars twinkled in the darkness. Miles away, in his own ship, Varn prepared for the duel. He had already decided that after killing Ceres, he would drain the humans slowly. He would make it last for days. The creature that had caused so much trouble would suffer for every moment of it. He smiled at the thought. In his centuries of life, he had never lost a duel. He did not intend to start now. But Varn had never fought against a human, and Tejo had already sent a secret message to Yuna back on the station. 3 simple words. Send the package. Yuna did not understand what it meant, but she sent it anyway. Something was coming, something that would change everything. The Grand Hall of the Crimson Fang had been transformed into an arena. Nocturi from both ships lined the walls, watching with hungry eyes. This was not just a duel, it was history. The end of House Valdrin, or the humiliation of House Mordak. Either way, blood would flow. Ceres stood at one end of the arena, dressed in light combat armor. She carried a thin black sword that had been in her family for generations. Her face was calm, but Tejo could see the fear in her eyes. At the other end stood Varn. He wore no armor, only his flowing robes. He needed none. His psychic shields were stronger than any metal. His weapon was a jagged blade that looked like it had been carved from bone. Before we begin, Varn announced to the crowd, let us remember what is at stake. When I win this duel, I will claim everything House Valdrin possesses. Their ships, their territories, their servants, and their lady's life. He smiled at Teho in the crowd. And I will claim the human as well. I have special plans for him. Ceres's grip tightened on her sword. You speak too much, Varn. Let us finish this. The Duel Master, an ancient Nocturi brought specifically for this purpose, raised his hand. The right of dominance has been invoked and accepted. The duel shall be to submission or death. May the strongest blood prevail. His hand dropped. Varn attacked instantly. He moved faster than Teho's eyes could follow. One moment he was standing still, the next he was in front of Ceres, his blades slashing at her throat. Ceres barely blocked in time. The impact of their swords sent shockwaves through the hall. They fought like two storms colliding. Blades flashed, sparks flew. Their psychic energies crashed against each other, visible as waves of red and black light. The Nocturi watching felt the pressure and trembled. But it quickly became clear who was winning. Ceres was skilled, but Varn was a master. He had been fighting for 1,000 years. His every movement was perfect. His every strike was precise. He toyed with her, cutting her armor and drawing blood without delivering a killing blow. Is this all you have? Varn laughed, knocking her sword aside and kicking her to the ground. Your father would be disappointed. Ceres rolled away and stood, but she was panting now. Blood dripped from cuts on her arms and face. Her psychic shields were weakening under Varn's relentless assault. Teho watched with growing desperation. He looked at Kale, who stood nearby with clenched fists. Can't you help her? Teho whispered. It is forbidden. Anyone who interferes in a right of dominance is executed immediately. Varn unleashed a psychic attack that shattered Ceres's remaining shields. She screamed and fell to her knees. Clutching her head, dark energy swirled around her, crushing her will, filling her mind with nightmares. Submit, Varn commanded, standing over her with his blade raised. Submit, and I will make your death quick. Ceres looked up at him, blood running down her face. For a moment, Teho thought she would give in. The pain must have been unbearable. Instead, she spat at Varn's feet. Never. Varn's face twisted with rage. He raised his blade for the killing blow. Wait. The voice echoed through the hall. Everyone turned to see Teho stepping into the arena. Human, Varn said with amusement, have you come to beg for your mistress's life? No. Teho's voice was steady. I've come to invoke the right of the bonded. Silence. Complete and total silence. Even Varn looked surprised. What did you say? The right of the bonded. It's an old law, really old. I had Yuna look it up. Teho took a deep breath. If a noble is incapacitated during a duel, their bonded servant can take their place and continue the fight. That law has not been used in 500 years, the duel master said slowly. But it is valid. This is absurd, Varn shouted. A human cannot fight in a right of dominance. The law does not specify species, the duel master replied. Only that the servant must be formally bonded. Lady Ceres invoked the vow of consequence, which creates a formal bond. The human may fight. Varn stared at Teho with his cold black eyes. Then he laughed. It was an ugly sound, full of cruelty. Very well, little human. If you wish to die before your mistress, I will grant your wish. This will be entertaining. Ceres grabbed Teho's arm as he passed. What are you doing? He will kill you in seconds. Teho smiled down at her. Maybe, but humans are hard to kill. We're like cockroaches. He gently removed her hand and walked to the center of the arena. His heart was pounding now. He was not immune to fear, no matter what anyone thought. He was terrified. But he had learned long ago that fear was just another feeling, like hunger or tiredness. You acknowledged it and then you kept going. Yuna's package had arrived that morning, a modified UV flashlight, enhanced to produce a concentrated beam of solar radiation. Nocturi were weakened by sunlight. Their entire civilization existed in darkness for a reason. It was not much of a weapon, but it was something. Varn approached casually, not even bothering to raise his blade. Any last words, human? Tejo pulled out the flashlight. Just one. Surprise! He clicked it on. The beam hit Varn directly in the face. The effect was immediate. The ancient Nocturi screamed and stumbled backward, smoke rising from his pale skin. The light was not enough to kill him, but it weakened him, disrupted his concentration, broke his psychic shields. For the first time in centuries, Varn felt pain. Tejo attacked. He was not a warrior. He had no training. But he had something else. Pure, desperate aggression. He threw sand in Varn's eyes. He kicked him in the knee. He grabbed a piece of broken armor from the ground and used it like a club. Every time Varn tried to recover, Tejo hit him with another burst of UV light. It was not elegant. It was not honorable. It was not anything like the graceful dueling that the Nocturi knew. It was human. Varn fought back. Even weakened, he was deadly. His blade cut Tejo's arm, his chest, his leg. Blood splattered across the arena floor. Tejo should have fallen. Any other being would have fallen. But he kept getting up. Why won't you die? Varn screamed, slashing at him again. Tejo dodged clumsily and hit him with another UV burst. Because I'm too stupid to know when to quit. The crowd watched in disbelief. The human was broken and bleeding, barely able to stand. But he was still fighting, still moving, still refusing to surrender. Saris watched with tears in her eyes. She had never seen anything like it. This fragile, short-lived creature was giving everything he had to save her. Not because he had to, not because he was forced to, because he chose to. Tejo finally saw his chance. Varn was blinded, weakened, confused. For just a moment, his guard was down. Tejo tackled him. They crashed to the ground together. Tejo pinned the UV light directly against Varn's chest and held it there. The ancient Nocturi screamed as the light burned into him, sapping his strength, breaking his will. With his other hand, Tejo grabbed Varn's own blade and pressed it against his throat. "Yield!" Tejo gasped, blood dripping from his mouth. "Yield, or I'll see how deep this goes." Varn looked into Tejo's eyes. He searched for the bluff. He searched for the hesitation that would tell him this human was not serious. He found nothing, just a calm, steady gaze that said, "I will absolutely do this." "I yield," Varn whispered. The hall erupted. Some cheered, some screamed in disbelief, some simply stood in shocked silence. Tejo rolled off Varn and lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. Everything hurt. He was pretty sure several bones were broken. His blood was pooling beneath him. But he was alive. And he had won. Saris appeared above him, her face wet with tears. "You impossible, foolish, wonderful human." Tejo tried to smile. "Did I look cool? Please tell me I looked cool." "You looked like a dying maniac." "Good enough?" He closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. When he woke up 3 days later in the medical bay, Saris was sitting beside his bed. She had not left his side once. Tejo spent 2 weeks recovering in the medical bay. The Nocturi doctors were amazed he had survived at all. His wounds should have been fatal. His blood loss should have killed him. His body should have simply given up. But humans, they discovered, were remarkably hard to kill. During those 2 weeks, Tejo had many visitors. Mira came every day, bringing him food and telling him stories about the crew. Doric and the other guards he had saved during the raider attack came to thank him personally. Even Kale visited, standing awkwardly by the door. "I misjudged you," Kale admitted gruffly. "I thought you were a fool who would bring ruin to my lady. I was wrong." "Does this mean we're friends now?" Tejo asked with a grin. "No," Kale paused, "but perhaps we are no longer enemies." "I'll take it." Yuna arrived 3 days before Tejo was released. She had demanded transport from Horizon's Edge the moment she heard what happened. When she burst into the medical bay and saw Tejo covered in bandages, she punched him in the arm. "Ow! That's for almost dying." She punched him again, and that's for making me worry. Stop hitting the injured person. But she was crying while she yelled at him, and he was laughing while she hit him, and somehow it all felt exactly right. The story of the duel had spread across the Nocturi star systems like wildfire. The human who challenged a 1,000-year-old lord and won. The cargo worker who fought with a flashlight and stubbornness. The impossible servant who had changed everything. Lord Varn had retreated to his territory in disgrace. His defeat at the hands of a human had destroyed his reputation. No one feared him anymore. His own house members were already plotting against him. Ceres, on the other hand, had become a legend, not because of her own power, but because of the loyalty she inspired. A human had risked his life to save her. The lowest being in the galaxy had stood up for one of the highest. It was a story that made people think. Maybe strength was not just about fear and domination. Maybe there was another way. The lunar cycle ended on a quiet evening. Tejo stood on the observation deck, watching the stars drift by. His wounds had healed, though he would carry scars for the rest of his life. He did not mind. Scars were just stories written on skin. Ceres found him there, standing alone in the soft light. "Your servitude is complete," she said, stopping beside him. "You are free to return to Horizon's edge. A shuttle is ready to take you." Tejo nodded slowly. "I know. I have prepared payment for your time. Enough credits to live comfortably for many years. You could buy your own ship if you wanted. See the galaxy." "That's generous." Ceres looked at him, and her expression was something he had never seen before. It was vulnerable, uncertain, almost afraid. "Before you go," she said quietly, "I want you to know something. In 800 years, I have never met anyone like you. You showed me that the universe is bigger than fear, that kindness is not weakness, that the smallest being can change everything." Ceres, I am not good with words like this. I have spent centuries being cold and distant because that is what was expected of me. But you, she took a breath, you made me feel warm again, and I do not want to lose that. Tejo turned to face her fully. The vampire who had terrified him on their first meeting now looked almost human. She was scared of being rejected. She was scared of being alone. She was just a person, despite the power and the fangs and the ancient blood. "What are you asking me?" he said gently. "Stay." The word came out like a confession, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, as I do not know. Something new, something we can figure out together. Tejo was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Horizon's Edge with its cramped quarters and endless cargo shifts. He thought about Earth, which he had not visited in years. He thought about all the places he had wanted to see and never had. Then he thought about Mira's laugh, Kale's grudging respect, the card games in his quarters, the conversations in the garden, the feeling of belonging somewhere. "Does this position come with benefits?" he asked. Ceres blinked. "What?" "Benefits. You know, health insurance, vacation time, a dental plan." For a moment, Ceres just stared at him. Then she started laughing. Really laughing, the way she had in the cargo bay after the battle. It was a beautiful sound. "Yes," she managed between laughs. "Full benefits. The best in 12 star systems." "Then I accept." Yuna joined the crew officially as chief engineer. She claimed she was only staying to keep Tejo out of trouble, but everyone could see she loved working on the advanced Nocturi technology. Within a week, she had improved the ship's engine efficiency by 12%. Kale became Tejo's reluctant sparring partner. He had decided that if this human was going to stay, he at least needed to learn how to fight properly. Their training sessions were painful and embarrassing, but Tejo slowly improved. He would never be a warrior, but he became good enough to survive. The Crimson Fang became known across the galaxy as the ship with that crazy human aboard. Other species were confused by the stories they heard. A human living among Nocturi, a vampire noble who laughed and smiled. It seemed impossible. But Tejo had made a career out of doing impossible things. Months later, a young alien from a minor species approached Tejo at a space station. The alien was clearly nervous and kept glancing at the Nocturi guards standing nearby. "Is it true?" the alien asked in a whisper. "What they say about you?" "What do they say? That you bumped into a Nocturi noble and lived? That you challenged a lord and won? That you made the vampires laugh?" Tejo smiled. "Yeah, something like that. But how? You are just a human. You are weak. You are mortal. You have no powers." Tejo thought about the question seriously. It was a fair question. He was weak. He was mortal. He had no special abilities. But that was exactly why he had succeeded. "Being weak means I never expected to win," he said finally, "so I never gave up. Being mortal means I know my time is short, so I never wasted it on fear. And having no powers," he shrugged, "that just means I had to use what I did have. Stubbornness, creativity, a really good flashlight." The alien looked confused. "A flashlight?" "Long story." Saris appeared beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Are you telling tales again?" "Just answering questions." Tejo grinned up at her. "Ready to go?" "Our business here is finished. We can leave whenever you wish." Tejo turned back to the young alien. "Listen, I know the universe seems scary. I know there are bigger and stronger beings everywhere. But that doesn't mean you can't make a difference. You just have to be too stupid to know when to quit." He winked and walked away, Saris at his side, her guards falling in behind them. The alien watched them go, thinking about what he had said. On the shuttle back to the Crimson Fang, Saris leaned her head against Tejo's shoulder. It was a gesture of trust that would have been unthinkable a few months ago. Now it felt natural. "You know," she said, "I have been thinking about how we met." "You mean when I crashed into your butt?" "Yes." She smiled. "That moment." "What about it?" "At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. A mortal human touching a Nocturi noble. An unforgivable insult. And now?" Saris looked up at him, her red eyes soft and warm. "Now I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Tejo put his arm around her. "See, I told you that armor was nice. Very shiny, very impressive, worth bumping into. You are impossible." "I know." They sat together as the shuttle carried them home. Two unlikely companions who had found each other across the vastness of space. A vampire noble who learned to laugh, a human who never learned to fear. And a love story that began with the most awkward collision in galactic history. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor, and sometimes the best things in life happen completely by accident. The end.